G'day everybody, I hope you are super well today. It is so good to see you. It is so good to see you as well. Thanks for being here. I want to, in this video, triple down on the D6. But first, I just wanted to make a brief announcement in regards to what I said at the end of the last episode. A thank you, a very massive thank you to someone who doesn't want to be named, but thank you so much for lending me your glorious 50mm lens. This is the lens that we are shooting on right now. This is an F-mount 50mm 1.2 manual focus, manual aperture, etc. The picture you are seeing right now is from this lens. What do you think? I think it looks pretty good so far. I haven't seen it on my 5K iMac yet, but I think it's looking pretty sweet. And during this video, I am going to show you a few stills I have captured with this lens. Now I'm going to do a full video about this lens on the Z mount later on, but just to keep this a little more entertaining, we'll have some stills from the 50mm 1.2 F mount on the Z7. Let's dive into, for the third time, the D6. What is all the fuss about the D6? The D6 is a camera made for a very, very small, very unique, very niche market. It is so exciting what Canon have done with their similar flagship camera. No question, with their amazing 5.7K, I think, video. But one does have to ask the question, how many people will actually ever use it? And as I said in my last video, I wonder really if you might get 1 in 10,000 users actually using these features, which are above and beyond 4K. So thus, ultimately, what we have is a great deal of fuss being stirred up, mostly on YouTube, about the fact that Nikon has failed yet again because they don't have 5.7K and Canon do. How does this make any sense? If basically 1 in 10,000 people out there, 1 in 10,000 Nikon users, let alone probably 1 in 100,000 users, are actually ever going to own or use this camera. I also don't get this notion that this is a sign of Nikon's demise. This is a sign that Nikon doesn't care. It's completely not true. All camera companies today are on a war footing. Now that might seem laughable, but they have got epic market drops, shrinking market share, and they have to do absolutely everything in their power to ensure that they stay alive. And that means making tough decisions about the things that are most important, the things that their customers need, the things that the majority of their customers need in the most important markets. Make the wrong decisions in the cameras that they sell the most. Make the wrong decisions where the highest profit margins are. Now that's a disaster. Make a compromised decision where they hardly sell any units. Make a compromised decision in a camera where they're actually probably talking directly to those customers, and those customers go, if I can choose this over that, do I want, almost 6K video versus something else? Well, they'd probably say, I want the stuff that's related to stills, because a stills camera, a DSLR, is always best at stills. It's fantastic that we can shoot video on these things. It is fantastic. But I've got a D850, I've got a D4, I've got all these other F-mount DSLR cameras which I have endeavoured to shoot video on, and it's a pain in the bum. It's difficult to do. So what I ultimately see here is there's a great deal of belly aching over something that isn't even the optimal outcome. The optimal outcome, if you're going to have a stills and video camera, is not a DSLR. It is a mirrorless camera. You don't want to be shooting video on a DSLR. Now, what is real noise, what is real marketing is, of course, the Canon R5 with its 8K. Even if it's crippled 8K, this is a first, and this is exciting. And it's exciting because it keeps pushing the market along. I've talked to a few people on my channel, and they're going, oh my God, the D6, that's a clear indication of Nikon's failings. And I just scratch my head and I go, I don't understand. And then I'll dig into that a little deeper, and I'll ultimately find out they're never going to have a D6. They're not a D6 user. They're more a D850 or a D810 or some sort of camera like that. So they're not even interested in actually genuinely using this camera for what it excels at. They do something different. So why is it that these people, why is it that I would say 99% of the people that I talk to who are most upset about this don't actually use the camera, won't use the camera, maybe don't even shoot video? And so then I ask myself, it's just specs. It's a feature that one company's put in there that almost no one will use, that people are complaining about, who will never use either of them, any of them. It confuses me greatly. Nikon are on a war footing. Canon are on a war footing. And Sony, as Nikon and Canon catch up, are too on a war footing. They are all losing market share. Everybody is. There is fear that what we do today, by holding a camera in our hands up to our eyes and taking a photograph, that industry is going to end. Now, I firmly believe in my heart that my generation and the generation that has come after me, people who are in their 20s and 30s, they love taking photos with a camera. And there's millions of us that love taking photos with cameras. So I don't think for the next generation, that means 25 years, and perhaps the generation after that, 50 years, there will be the demise of cameras. And I'm not talking about image capturing devices in phones. I don't really call them cameras. They do something else. There's a whole lot of other business going on there. I'm talking about idea of the craft, the aperture, the shutter speed, the ISO, the choices, the lens, being able to change lenses, all of that stuff, all of that important stuff that gives us joy. There's going to be someone continuing to make artifacts, make cameras, make tools for people like you and me, so we can do this for many decades to come. Nikon want to be one of those companies. They certainly have all the credentials for it. They're doing a great job with the Z cameras. The Nikon D6, I'm not sure anyone in the wild has actually used it yet, which is the most frustrating thing about all the negativity around it. We don't actually know how blindingly fast it is. We don't actually know how good is that focus. And we don't know how good is that connectivity, that if you are a journalist or a sports photographer, how well have they done with their graphical user interface and their ergonomics, which they are leaders in, how well have they done to allow that photojournalist to get their job done and to get their pics off? How well have they done? We don't know yet. Yet everybody's saying it's a fail because of video, which most people won't use. I don't understand why the D6, which is 90 to 95% as good as the Canon, spells the end of Nikon. Yet again, gloom and doom, the end of Nikon. And now it's not just YouTubers, but it's actually people in the comments saying this is a disaster and how can I possibly trust Nikon to do the right thing? I don't get it. I don't get it. They're doing all sorts of cool stuff. And they're focusing on the future, and they have said the future is mirrorless. They have said That is where they expect everybody to transition to. And they will support F as long as they think is relevant. And keep in mind, we've just got the 780, we've just got the D6. These are two brand new cameras, which, if like any of my other Nikon cameras, will continue to function for a decade or two. That effectively means we are going to have F viability for another couple of decades, let alone the fact that F lenses, all of them, will mount on a Z camera, and a very large percentage of them will work fully on a Z camera. And of course, some of them will be manual, like the lens we're using today. So to bring this conversation full circle back to where it started, here I have a manual F-mount lens sitting atop my tripod. It's got the F to Z adapter, and this lens, I don't quite know how old it is still working just as hard today on a Z-mount camera, doing a great job. It's doing one particular job, and it's doing superbly. How is any of that bad, and how is any of that a fail? I've been in business for 30 years. I understand the realities of sometimes having to choose to do one thing and not another because you don't have the money to do everything. Sometimes you have to face the reality that perfection is difficult to create and it takes many, many years. So sometimes things take longer than you want them to take. And sometimes you have to accept you make mistakes and you get things wrong. And that is also part of life. And that is also part of manufacturing. I think the expectations are too high. I think to be comparing Sony versus Canon versus Nikon all the time, when they're all, it's like the ocean, it's all kind of bubbling and ebbing and moving at different speeds. For the last 20 years, when we got to digital, yeah, Canon was ahead of Nikon to begin with, then Nikon got ahead of Canon, and then Sony came along and kicked both companies in the pants. And now we are right in the middle of that war, and to be jumping to conclusions and saying death this and fail that and the end of companies and the end of days and not having respect for us as customers, etc., etc. These guys are in a fight for their lives and they're doing as much as they can as quick as they can. And they've literally got millions of customers that they have to satiate. Millions. And every customer has slightly different needs. And it is extremely logical that the F mount is going to be secondary to the Z mount. The F mount today has every possible lens you could ever want or imagine. So why would it be that they would throw resources into the F mount? It's not logical. It's there, it works. We've got the best cameras in the D850. It's considered absolutely still the top of its class in that category, still today, 3 years after it's released. D5, again, top of its class in that category when it was released. D500, amazing cameras. We are fully serviced in this space. As for lenses, some of the best optics ever made in the 20th and the 21st century. There's nothing wrong here. This is just transition, and it takes years. Something as complex as starting a brand new camera system from scratch that millions of people have got to sort of integrate into their lives and into their businesses, it takes years. It doesn't take 6 months, doesn't take 3 months, it takes years. I've said it before, 4 years might be the sort of time frame you'd expect to have enough parity that a professional could move over to the Z from the F. We're not even halfway through 4 years, not yet. I've been upgrading cameras for 30 years. Nikon, roughly in the digital age, was upgrading cameras every 4 years, roughly. I am not expecting a D850 replacement until 2021. That's next year. And I think it may well be sooner. It may well be this year. So nothing is out of kilter. And the lack of a firmware update for D850s for CX Express or D5s or D500s, it doesn't signal anything. They're a busy company and they've got to make their Z cameras compelling for their new customers or the customers that are thinking about leaving, more so than they have to worry about the F customers whose gear and everything currently works perfectly with XQD. It's very confusing to me why any of this is, why, and it's a great example. Why is the CFX Express update that was promised by Nikon a year ago for the old F-mount cameras, why is that causing anyone any problems? You get that update, nothing changes in your world. Your camera still works exactly the same as it did the day before, and the only thing that changes is if one day you're thinking of going to Zs, then you might want to start collecting CF Express cards. Great, fair enough, that's fine. So you're going to Zs, so buy a CF Express card if you want, and then it can sit on the shelf. Doesn't seem to make much sense to buy it and sit it on the shelf. Or conversely, if you need more cards, XQD cards still work in Z cameras, and I'm sure they'll still work in the Z8 and the Z9 and whatever happens for the next couple of years. So we're going to have an overlap for a while. We're getting 95 to 99% of what we want and need, and this 1%, which is so tiny, is causing a problem with both this firmware upgrade and is causing a problem with the D6 not having quite as large video capabilities as the 1DX Mark II, Mark III. Can we spend some time looking at the 99% that's good? Can we? Can we spend some time looking at the 99% that's good rather than dwelling on the 1% that probably affects 1 in 10,000 people, yet that gets leveraged into the death of a company? Anyway, that is my opinion piece on the Nikon D6 and some of what Nikon are doing right now that seems to be upsetting some people. I think everything's fine. These companies, yeah, there's a lot that goes on to making all this come together. Fear not, it'll all be fine. It'll all be fine. And worst case scenario, if it's not fine, I think any of us having to change camera system in 10 years' time because Nikon are gone or Canon are gone or Sony are gone, that's one of the minor problems that we have to face in the world today. In the meantime, I think it would be better for everybody's happiness levels if we enjoy what we are given and what we do have, and that we buy the camera that best suits our use case rather than worrying about an absolute bag full of maybes and 1%. Doesn't seem to be the best way to be positive, to get on with life, to create, to be the photographer you want to be, to go out there and shoot birds, trucks, cars, sports, planes, mountains, and in my case, I like cityscapes, as you all know. And you've just been watching cityscapes from the f50mm 1.2 on the Z7. As always, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Yes, that was a bit of a rant, but I think it's important. Glass half full, 95 to 99% of what we're getting now is fabulous. Let's dwell on that, shall we? Let's dwell on that. When I think back to the technological changes that we've had in photography since the rise of digital in 2004 was when the Nikon D70 came out and literally made digital available to everybody and anybody. And that was the start of this wave, this tsunami of change that has affected so many things for people like me. And here we are, we're absolutely spoiled for what we can do and what we can buy and what we can create and what we can achieve. I'm a guy who's worked in film, and this is like the future. And the future keeps getting updated and remade and reset, and the bar keeps getting higher every year. It's insane. Everything's good. Or as they say in the Lego movie, everything is awesome. Is it not? I think it is. Everybody, it's so good to see you. Please share, please like, please comment. I'd love to know what you think about all of what I've just been opinioning on. Love to hear what you think about all that. If you'd like to see more of what I talk about, click on the Matt Irwin Photography down here. And there's over 150 videos you can watch right now. And please come and visit in our city store because I'm making some new stock. That's why I'm here in the warehouse today. new stock, new prints, printing them out on my big printer. Here it is. As the credits roll, I will fast track how we mount a picture. So good to see you as always. I hope I haven't been too harsh. I just feel like as a photographer, we have so many amazing tools and toys to play with that really, how could there possibly be anything wrong at all? There just can't. Let me grab my sticky tape. We have literally got everything we could ever want and more. All right. See you later. I am going to be putting some of my favourite images from Instagram over the last year or so into the gallery so you can get a real one signed by me. That's what I've been doing for 30 years, is making real pictures that people can buy and keep. It's been lots of fun. I feel very privileged. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Okay, I'm really going now. Okay, bye.